an article that came out recently extolling, it was actually fairly positive for carnivore. It had the usual caveats, vitamin C and blah, blah, blah stuff. But, and they called us meat fluencers. So I'm a meat fluencer apparently. And I guess I'd welcome you into that category as well. So, it says you're a certified nutrition health coach. You're on YouTube, you're on social media. Tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get started in this stuff?
I grew up in San Diego, California. My parents were both addicted to drugs and alcohol. So unfortunately, the relationship didn't last very long. And my mom was a single parent who did her best to keep a job. But because of her addiction, we just grew up very low income, eating lots of top ramen, peanut butter jelly sandwiches, just really ultra processed cheap food. And in a way, luckily, that meant that I wasn't able to overconsume food. We didn't have tons of desserts and sodas and things like that in the house. But I think that was one of the reasons why I was actually slightly underdeveloped as a child. I'm pretty short in stature. My jaw's pretty narrow. I had to have a retainer that cranked open my jaw. I had headgear, braces, rubber bands, a neck brace, all sorts of things just to get me kind of in alignment when I was younger. When I went off to college, I gained the freshman 15 because it was finally time to have access to the all-you-can-eat buffet, which I was actually pretty happy about. I was a track and field athlete, so I see what your daughter's running. I'm like, whoo, she was faster than me in that 400. I was able to maintain my weight at least for the years that I was in college, though now that I had access to all these ultra-processed foods, I was having yeast infections, skipping a menstrual cycle, mood swings, irritability, lots of acne. I was taking a nap every single day. So there were small little things that I thought were just normal. It's what happens when you're younger. And then I ended up graduating from college in Minnesota, wanting to go back to the sunshine and the beaches, but not wanting to go back to California. So I moved to Maui and met my now husband there. And he was someone who had already done the all fruit fruitarian diet, the vegan diet, the vegetarian diet, paleo, Mediterranean. He had done all the different kinds of diets. And from the years of doing a plant-based diet, he ended up having a lot of gut issues and skin issues because of all of those, unfortunately, years of trying to do the best thing for his health, the environment, for the animals, that caused him to end up getting pretty sick. So when I stepped into the picture, he had already done a ketogenic diet. He had already had his gut healed. But then I snuck in and said, hey, we're having pizzas and tacos and alcohol and cookies because that's, we can get away with eating these things because we're going to go and work out. But unfortunately, he ended up having a lot of his skin issues and gut issues come back. And so he ended up saying, you know what, Lillie, you can keep doing what you're doing. I'll go and drive you to get a donut, but I'm going to go back to eating a ketogenic diet, which inevitably, as I continued to look up to him and be inspired that he didn't need to have dessert to be happy, that I been a bowl of cookie dough and he was not needing to have any of that. And he was still very happy. I started asking more questions and learning, why don't you want to have these tomatoes? Oh, lectins. What's a lectin? Oh, why don't you want to have certain things? And just by being around him, and because we grocery shop and cook together and have our meals together, I just slowly started falling into it.
Okay, well, that's quite a background. It's interesting. Like I said, you grew up with not a lot of money, and there's a lot of people in that situation, and that's just in the U.S. And you go to the rest of the world, and where there's a lot of poverty, worldwide, there's often malnutrition, stunting, nutritional deficiencies, and so on and so forth. There are, here in this country, the poor tend to be obese in many cases. And, because of the access. I mean, the main food you can eat is this really cheap, very low quality, but often high in calorie food. Now, like you said, you guys were poor enough to where you didn't even have enough calories to maybe, for good or bad, to develop those aspects of it. But, you mentioned short stature, maybe dental, mouth development issues around diet. That's, goes to work. Guys like Weston A. Price talked about that way back in the 1920s, I believe, 20s, 30s. And we see that, nutrition has a huge role in development of kids. And so that's an important aspect. It's interesting that you're husband had been on all those different diets there. And I don't fault anybody for trying these things, but ultimately, you should and eventually do what makes the most benefit to you health wise. Were you ever tempted when you first met him to try to go down this plant-based fruitarian route? Was that ever on your radar?
So because he had already done them prior to me meeting him, he could tell me the pros and the cons. So he's like, the pro to eating the all fruit diet is I felt very light. I had some really crazy wild dreams, but I started having gout-like symptoms and I couldn't walk and I had to call up of work and I started having all these different health issues. So I was never influenced to have more plant-based. My aunt has still to this day been vegan my whole life, knowing her. So I remember when I was a little kid and I asked like, oh, what is a vegan? My aunt said, oh, we don't eat meat. And I was like, but what about bacon? She's like, no bacon. And I was like, ooh, I could never be a vegan. So I never really got into the plant-based movement.
Yeah. Hopefully your aunt is still doing well, by the way. I never wish bad for anyone, but I mean, sometimes, we all have these crazy uncles and aunts. It's like, there's somebody in the family that's, doesn't quite, and probably they think I'm crazy because I just eat a bunch of meat and so on and so forth. And, it is what it is. I'm looking at the behind you, you've got a number of textbooks in there. I like the sarcasm is welcome sign. I think that's quite good. I'm a big fan of sarcasm in a lot of cases, but was there, you said you gained weight in college. What did you study in school, by the way? And then how did you decide that, you mentioned your husband, was there a certain moment you said, hey, I'm just going to go do kind of more of a meat-based diet? When did that come about?
So my background is in economics and accounting. So that's what my major was. And then basically he started moving more into a ketogenic diet and I was still eating my processed food diet. And then slowly I was like, okay, I guess I'll not have bread for this week. Okay, I guess I won't have rice this month. And then slowly started noticing I'm losing weight. My energy is coming back. My joint pain in my knees from 8 years of doing hurdles has gone away completely. And I slowly started noticing these little things improving that I thought were inevitable and I was going to have for a lifetime. So he actually kept going more and more meat-based first because he was saying, you know what, Lillie, I don't think the broccoli is agreeing with me still. I don't think the asparagus is helping my digestion. I'm still not having good stools. I think it's from the cauliflower. So he slowly was removing the veggies. And then I was looking down at my plate and I was like, well, that's not fair. How come I have all this cauliflower rice, cauliflower wraps, cauliflower pizza crust, cauliflower, and you get to have more bacon and more cheese and butter and delicious meat. So I slowly started having less of the veggies. But then the other turning point would have been a video on YouTube from Dr. Ken Berry saying you can get all the vitamins and minerals you need from just beef, bacon, butter, liver, eggs, and sardines. So we were already eating all of those foods, but we were having a bunch of veggies with it. So we're like, okay, well, let's just slowly start having less veggies. Kind of the other turning point.
Okay. And you'd mentioned you live in, I think you said Maui for a while, which is obviously kind of a paradise. So I got to visit it for the first time in January. And I guess that's an easy place to be a fruitarian. I think there's a lot of them that live in Hawaii, I think. Was that I mean, what prompted the move from there, which many people would say it's beautiful, to back to, St. Louis?
Oh, it's a long story. COVID. Basically, the whole island runs on tourism, and with COVID happening, and then everyone was getting demoted, and there was no promotions in sight and things like that. So we ended up just going back to a place that's more affordable.
Got it. Yeah, it is quite expensive there, and I think Hawaii was one of the states that was very aggressive with shutting everything down, and you can different opinions on that one, but